There's a particular kind of quiet that settles over someone when they finally stop running from the truth. Not a peaceful quiet. More like the silence after something breaks. And I'm feeling that energy very strongly right now as I step into this reading. Someone in your life has arrived at that silence. They've stopped. And in stopping, they've had to face something about themselves that they've been carefully, skillfully avoiding for a long time. Take a breath with me for a moment. Because what's coming through here isn't just about them. It's about you, too. About who you've become through this. And I think some of you are going to feel very seen in the next few minutes. Let me just sit with this energy for a second. There's something layered happening here. Something that's been unfolding slowly, maybe over weeks or months, maybe longer. And at the heart of it is a connection. A bond that meant something real. Something that didn't just exist on the surface level but ran deeper, the kind of connection that leaves a mark regardless of what happened. But there was always something off balance about it, wasn't there? Have you ever been in a dynamic where you could feel the weight of it all resting more heavily on your side? Where you were the one thinking ahead, the one investing, the one holding space, while the other person moved through the connection as if their presence alone was enough? That's the energy I'm picking up here. This person in your life operated from a certain kind of center. Their own. And I don't think they were fully aware of it. That almost makes it more complicated, doesn't it? Because it's easier to process something when the other person knew what they were doing. When they meant to take more than they gave. But when it was unconscious, when they genuinely couldn't see it, that leaves you somewhere strange. You can't quite call it cruelty. But you also can't pretend it didn't cost you something. And it did. It cost you something. The energy around this person right now is heavy with realization. Something happened that shifted their perspective. I don't know if it was a moment of clarity, a conversation, a loss of something they took for granted, or simply time creating enough distance that they could finally see the full picture. But whatever it was, the veil has dropped. And they are now looking back at this connection with completely different eyes. This is interesting, because at first I expected to feel defensiveness from them. That protective energy people put up when they're confronted with something uncomfortable about themselves. But it's not there. Or if it was there, it's collapsing now. What I feel instead is something rawer than that. Something quieter and more painful. It's the particular discomfort of someone watching themselves from the outside and not recognizing who they were. Not liking what they see. Some of you already know this moment is happening for them. You've sensed it. Maybe they've reached out differently. Maybe something in their energy toward you has shifted. Maybe you haven't heard from them at all, but you just know, the way you always knew things about this connection before they were confirmed. Trust that knowing. There's something I want to say about what this person is realizing. Because the reading here isn't just showing me that they've noticed they acted selfishly. It's deeper than that. What's coming through is that they're beginning to understand the actual weight of what they ignored. Not just in a surface, I was inconsiderate way. We're talking about a genuine reckoning with the fact that there was someone right in front of them, offering something real, and they consistently looked past it in favor of what they wanted in that moment. They were guided by something true and didn't follow it. They had access to a depth of connection that many people search their whole lives for, and they treated it like it would always be there. Like you would always be there. Waiting. Patient. Available. Does this feel familiar? Because I want to be careful here, this reading is reaching a collective of people and not every detail will land for every single one of you. Take what resonates and gently release what doesn't. But for those of you this is speaking to, I feel like you've spent a long time trying to understand what you could have done differently. Wondering if you asked for too much or not enough. Replaying conversations in your mind, wondering where the shift happened, what you missed, what you could have said. And I want you to hear this clearly, there was nothing wrong with what you offered. The limitation was never yours. This person was not in the same place you were. And more than that, they weren't capable of seeing clearly at the time. There's something that comes through here almost like they were operating from a wound that they weren't addressing. A pattern of putting themselves at the center of every situation, not because they were malicious but because, at some level, they'd learned to protect themselves by keeping focus on their own needs. Their own narrative. Their own comfort. You were real to them, but not real enough. Not real in the way that penetrated through the layers of their self-focus. That's a painful thing to sit with. I know. But the energy is shifting now. That's the point. Something has cracked open in them. And what's fascinating is that it seems like your own movement has been part of the catalyst. The version of you they're seeing now, or sensing, because maybe you haven't been in direct contact, is different from the one they remember. There's something they're noticing about your energy that is harder to ignore than your presence ever was. It's the energy of someone who stopped waiting. Someone who stopped trying to be enough for a person who wasn't fully showing up. And that shift in you, quiet as it may have been, has registered somewhere in them on a level that words couldn't have reached. You evolved. That's not a small thing. Let me stay with this for a moment because it's important. The growth that's showing up in your energy right now didn't happen easily. I don't want to just float past that. You didn't arrive here, at this calmer, more grounded place, by accident. You got here by choosing yourself repeatedly when every instinct might have been to go back, to explain one more time, to try one more approach, to send one more message. You stayed when the urge to pursue was strong. And in staying with yourself, you became something different. Something steadier. That steadiness is what they're feeling now. And it's unsettling them in a way that nothing else could have. Because here's the thing about someone who's been self-centered in a relationship, they're often still focused on themselves even in the aftermath. Even the grief becomes about them. The regret becomes about them. But what happens when the person they hurt stops centering them, stops folding their life around them, stops reaching out or reacting or engaging in the old pattern, suddenly there's a mirror held up. And in your absence, or in your changed presence, they're seeing themselves reflected back in a way that they can't spin into a comfortable story. There's no one to blame. No narrative to hide behind. Just the quiet, uncomfortable truth of what they were and what they let slip through their hands. I'm picking up on something that feels almost like grief in their energy. Real grief. Not the performed kind. Not the kind that shows up hoping to be witnessed. This feels more private than that. More internal. Like they're sitting with something that they haven't told anyone because they don't quite know how to say it out loud. Maybe they don't have words for it yet. Maybe it's still forming. But what I keep hearing underneath all of this, almost like a thread running through the whole reading, is recognition. They recognize you now in a way they didn't before. The irony of that isn't lost on me. That you are more visible to them now than you ever were when you were fully present in their life. That absence, or change, has illuminated something that proximity had somehow obscured. This is interesting too, because the bond that existed between you wasn't ordinary. There's something about this connection that had a quality of depth to it that doesn't just appear between any two people. Something that both of you could feel, even if only one of you honored it consistently. And I think this person is now coming face to face with that fact. That what they had was something rare. Not just a relationship. Not just a connection. Something that had roots. Something that was trying to grow into something real, something lasting. And they treated it carelessly. Not brutally, just carelessly. The way people treat things they assume will stay. Some of you might be wondering what this means for your connection going forward. And I want to be honest with you here because I think you deserve honesty more than you deserve false hope. What I can tell you is that something has genuinely shifted in this person. The realization they're having is real. But realization and change are two different timelines. A person can wake up to the truth of how they behaved and still not be ready to do the work that would be required to show up differently. So if there's any movement toward you, any reaching out, any change in their presence, I would encourage you to pay less attention to what they say and more attention to how they show up over time. Because words are easy once someone feels the weight of their own mistakes. Consistency is what's earned. The energy I feel from you in this reading, though, this is where I want to focus for a moment, because this is the part that genuinely moves me. You are no longer where you were. Whatever this reading title implied about them coming to a realization, about them changing, about them seeing you differently, the most significant transformation in this story is yours. And it happened quietly. Without audience. Without anyone clapping for you or validating the difficulty of it. You just did the work. You sat with the disappointment. You stopped making yourself smaller to fit into a space that was never fully offered to you. You stopped the kind of hoping that keeps you tethered to someone who isn't choosing you. Not through bitterness. Not through dramatic exits. Just through a slow, quiet choosing of yourself. That is profound. I mean that. There's an energy here that feels like someone who has finally put down something very heavy. Not with anger, not with relief exactly, but with the kind of tired, gentle acknowledgement that comes from realizing you were carrying something that was never entirely yours to carry. You were holding the weight of this connection almost entirely on your own. You were feeling enough for both of you, hoping enough for both of you, paying attention enough for both of you. And at some point, you stopped. You just set it down. Have you noticed how different you feel in your own body since that happened? Even if things externally haven't changed yet. Even if questions still swirl. There's something underneath the uncertainty that feels more like solid ground than it has in a long time. That's not nothing. That's everything. Something keeps coming through here, almost like a whisper, and I want to share it because it feels important. It feels like you spent a long time needing this person to understand. Needing them to see. Needing the acknowledgement of what you gave, what you felt, what the connection meant. And that need was so human. So understandable. But somewhere along the way, you stopped needing that. And this is what I want you to really hear, you stopped needing it before they gave it. You found your own validation. You stopped waiting for them to confirm what you already knew about the value of what you offered. You decided, on your own, in the quiet, that you were worthy of more. That your love and your energy deserved someone who could actually receive it. That shift happened in you first. The realization in them came after. There's something worth sitting with there. Because this isn't a reading about victory. It's not about them finally seeing the truth so that you can feel justified, though you are. It's about something quieter and more meaningful than that. It's about the fact that you moved on internally before anything external confirmed it was safe to do so. You trusted yourself. And that trust in yourself is now being reflected back to you from multiple directions, including from their energy shifting toward you, from opportunities that feel more aligned, from a general sense that the world is readjusting around who you're becoming rather than who you were trying to be for someone else. The energy changes here. There's something forward-looking starting to emerge. And it doesn't feel frantic the way it might have before. There's no urgency in it. No desperation. Which tells me something significant about where you are right now emotionally and spiritually. The version of you that showed up in the earlier stages of whatever this connection was, that version was giving from a place that was sometimes, not always but sometimes, tinged with a need for things to work out. For them to be who you needed them to be. For the connection to become what you felt it could be. And that need, as tender and as real as it was, also kept you slightly off balance. Slightly dependent on their response for your own sense of stability. That's gone now. Or it's going. And what's replacing it is something I can only describe as a kind of quiet personal authority. You know what you want. You know what you're worth. And you're not willing to bend that knowing for anyone, not even for someone you genuinely cared about. This is the version of you they are now encountering. No wonder things feel different. I want to say something about where this is going, not as a prediction, because energy is always in motion and you always have choice, but as an observation of what the current trajectory feels like. It feels like you are entering a period where the things that felt so uncertain before, where you stood, what you deserved, whether this connection would ever be reciprocal, are beginning to clarify. Not necessarily through dramatic resolution, but through a gentle, organic settling. You don't need to force anything. You don't need to make anyone understand anything. You don't need to engineer the outcome or hold this person accountable in some public or performative way. The universe is doing its own reckoning with the energy of this situation, and you are being called to simply stay present in your own life. Let things come to you from that steadier place. What this person does with their realization, that belongs to them. Their growth, if it happens, is their responsibility. Their grief about what they let go is theirs to carry. You can have compassion for that without absorbing it. You can even hold a quiet space of forgiveness, not for their sake, but for yours, without it meaning that you owe them access to who you are now. Forgiveness and reunion are not the same thing. Healing and returning are not the same path. You get to decide what, if anything, you want to allow back into your life. And I feel strongly that you know this now in a way you might not have before. If they reach out, you won't be reaching back from a wounded place. You'll be responding, if you respond, from clarity. From knowing. From that quiet place inside you that has already made its peace with the whole of this experience, including the parts that hurt. That is power. Real power. Not the kind that needs to be declared or witnessed. The kind that just lives in you now as a fact. I'm sitting with the whole of this energy as we come toward the end, and what I feel most strongly is this: something that caused you genuine pain is being transformed. Not erased, transformed. The experience of being unseen, of offering something real to someone who wasn't ready to receive it, of wondering for a long time whether you were the one who was off, whether you asked for too much or read the connection wrong, all of that is becoming something else in your hands. It's becoming wisdom. It's becoming discernment. It's becoming the kind of self-knowledge that will protect you in ways you can't yet fully see. You will not make the same mistake of overlooking the signs next time. You will not work so hard to convince yourself that someone is ready when everything they're doing shows you they're not. You will not pour yourself into something that only one of you is building. That's not cynicism. That's clarity. And clarity is a gift, even when the way it arrived felt like anything but. Trust where you are. Trust what you've built inside yourself through all of this. Trust that the version of you standing on this ground, quieter, more certain, less desperate, more whole, is exactly where you needed to arrive. Whatever comes next, and things are moving, things are shifting, you meet it as this version of yourself. And that changes everything about what's possible. That feels like the most important thing I can leave you with today. You've already done the hardest part. You've already become who you needed to be. The rest is just life catching up to that.